Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mailbox for the 6th of July 2011. My name is Totalbiscuit, bringing you your daily dose of community interaction, gaming discussion, and all that good stuff. You can email mailbox@cynicalbrit.com. That is mailbox@cynicalbrit.com with topics for future shows. Yes, I'm well aware it's the 7th of July. This is the Mailbox from yesterday. I didn't get a chance to get it finished, I am afraid. Very busy. And I should also let you know that there probably won't be any videos from Friday onwards to Monday because it is my 27th birthday. Yes, indeed, I'm 27 out of 27. And I am going to be out drinking most of the time and playing board games with friends, because that's just how I roll. The game in the background is the one and only Killing Floor, which is currently 75% off on Steam for the next couple of hours at any rate, and I would highly recommend that you pick it up because it's amazing, and you can see just why in the next 20 minutes of British gun splatty zombie killing action. First email comes in from Chris that says, I was playing Magicka this morning on Steam and saw a link to an article by the CEO of Paradox. He states that 90% of the company's sales are done digitally through Steam and Gamersgate. He blames the retailers for the prevalence of sequels in the market and that retailers are not good for the industry. With Paradox being mainly a PC publisher, this seems to be a reasonable and unsurprising statement, since services like Steam and Gamersgate have become much more convenient and user-friendly, not to mention the sales that threaten to bankrupt me. First off, do you think this is an accurate representation of other PC-centered publishers, and if so, are PC games going to disappear from retailers entirely? Secondly, do you agree with his claim that the retailers are to blame for the omnipresence of sequels and the overall lack of innovation, or is this another PC versus console problem? Lastly, and I know you touched on this before, do PC devs and publishers end up foregoing brick-and-mortar retailers in favor of digital distribution? And will this lead to a drop in release price, or will prices remain fairly consistent, with more of the money simply ending up with the people who actually make the game? Thanks for your time. I look forward to more videos. Right, well, it's an interesting concept, isn't it? The idea that retailers have something to do with sequels. I don't know if I agree. I mean, we're referring to Steam, for instance. Therefore, we have to refer to Valve. So we're referring to Valve, who makes sequels to every game they release. Team Fortress Classic, Team Fortress 2, Half-Life, Half-Life 2, Left 4 Dead, Left 4 Dead 2, Portal, Portal 2. Are you getting the idea here? Sequels are popular amongst gamers in general, and sequels are actually not a bad thing necessarily. The only problem is when you're getting repeated iterations of the same game that don't sufficiently innovate upon the previous one and don't learn the mistakes of the previous one. Sequels are a fantastic opportunity to fix the problems of the original game. And people keep buying them because that's actually what they want. You know, we have been clamoring for Half-Life 3 for how long? We can't, after that, then turn around and say, well, PC gamers don't like sequels. Yes, we do. We love them. Gamers in general love sequels because they like that sense of familiarity mixed with the sense of the new. Like, well, I can immediately pick up this game and recognize exactly what's going on. Hey, that character's there from the previous one. Isn't that fantastic? But there's all new systems, and we look forward to these games more so than anything. We buy these games outright, and we praise these games to high heaven. I mean, for God's sake, would you say that the fact that Mass Effect had a sequel was a bad thing? Hell no. Mass Effect 2 was a fantastic game. Mass Effect 3 will no doubt be fantastic. It's kind of a shame that Dragon Age Origins got a bad sequel, but hey, it's not bad that it got a sequel. It's bad that the sequel sucked. That's the problem. It's when sometimes you actually get sequels that completely deviate from the original formula and they end up being terrible, that people turn around and say, oh, why didn't you just make a different kind of game and not make a sequel? Sequels are fine. There's nothing wrong with them. I have no issue with sequels at all. I don't know why people keep flipping out over them. The argument could be made that that money could be spent on a different, new and original IP, but at the end of the day, why exactly would publishers actively do that when they know that a sequel will sell? This is how gamers act. They're scared of new IP, and they will buy sequels. And I don't think that's a really bad thing within the market, because there is original IP coming out, not as much as I would like, but there's nothing wrong with sequels either. You know, I want sequels to certain games. I want a new Deus Ex game that is good. Deus Ex 2 never happened as far as I'm concerned. I'm just going to ignore that. So I want another Deus Ex game. And I want Mass Effect 3. And I'm looking forward to all sorts of different titles that are actually sequels. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think you should blame retailers for it. That doesn't even make any sense. I mean, Paradox CEO, for the most part, speaks a lot of sense, but every now and again he's outspoken on things which don't make any sense whatsoever. He'll just happily say things like, there's something about retailers and sequels. What? No. Look at Steam. Look at how well sequels sell on Steam. It's got nothing to do with that, honestly. Now, it's nice that digital distribution is actually getting the forefront right there. And I think Paradox might have somewhat of a biased view because Paradox primarily sell very hardcore PC games that won't sell on shelves at all, and as a direct result, they really don't care about the retail space. Although I think Valve cares about the retail space much more, and that's actually the reason they kowtow to the publishers, the distributors, and of course the brick and mortars every now and again on the subject of release prices, for instance, and street dates, things that by all rights they shouldn't actually have to adhere to, but hey, they do anyway. They're worried because, of course, they are actually involved in the console market, and yes, console games are still primarily sold on the disc platform. That said, I saw a recent infographic about, what was it? Yes, PC gaming and the market buying habits and demographics in the UK, and PC boxed game sales still outstrip digital distribution in this country. To be fair, we do have a lot of shops that do stock a large selection, particularly Game, for instance. Game sells a ton of PC games because they have these massive 3 for 25 sections, or is it 2 for 25, whatever, 3 for 10, 2 for 15 and stuff like that, and you can get a lot of really good games there, so a lot of people pick those up, and that's kind of like getting sales on Steam, only that's much more reliable because they tend to be in that deal for a much longer time. So I don't think PC box sales are going away in this country just yet. I think they're pretty much dead in the US and certain European countries, but yeah, just take everything that the CEO of Paradox says with a pinch of salt, because as much as I love him, he is actually a bit crazy. This one comes in from TRR, who says, you often talked about piracy on the mailbox, and a general consensus seems to be that it's not morally right to pirate, since it is a form of stealing. We'll talk about that in a minute. God, that's such a thorny issue. Anyway, what are your views of illegally downloading old games? Games that you can barely get your hands on anymore. Is that even illegal? For example, a few months ago I downloaded Chrono Trigger, best RPG of all time. If you don't like it, you have no soul. Played it, loved it, and told all my friends about it. I'm 16 years old, so none of my friends have ever heard of it. What is a SNES? Chrono Trigger wasn't even released in Europe, for God's sake. In my eyes, I'm not stealing. I'm promoting an awesome game to a generation that have no clue what they're missing. What are your thoughts on this? Well, one, Chrono Trigger is available on Virtual Console, and Chrono Trigger is also available on DS. So I'm fairly sure Nintendo's probably not the biggest fan of that, and more to the point, Square isn't either. But to be honest, we're talking about ROM emulation, and we're talking about abandonware, which are two completely different things. Firstly, the consensus is not that piracy is a form of stealing. That's the thing. Stealing is legally obtaining something without permission with the intention to permanently deprive the owner of it. That's the basic definition of it. So you can't really steal a game digitally unless you take the copy off their servers. So you are just recreating it. It is a potential lost sale. It is copyright infringement, which is actually a civil offense in most sane countries. Some of the not so sane ones, it's criminal, but there you go. And honestly, you can't bring stealing into it because people go crazy when you don't get the terminology right. Piracy is it's still taking something without permission, but you don't intend to permanently deprive them of the physical good, just of the actual profit they would have made from selling it, assuming you had bought it, which of course they don't know. That's why it's such a dumb issue to debate, because you always get into these really thorny areas that nobody wants to talk about. But whatever the case, ROM emulation and abandonware. So the thing about ROM emulation is that a lot of ROMs are actually coming out in collections, like, say, the Sonic Mega Collection, I believe it's called. Sonic's Mega Drive, Genesis thingy, whatever. That's available for 360, it's available for PS3 as well, and that's actually a really good collection with a lot of games on it and a lot of added functionality and things like achievements as well as hidden extras. And then you've got things like Sega releasing Streets of Rage in what is effectively a ROM wrapper on Steam for like £3, and then you turn around and say, what you're doing? Because this is awful. The same with the Dreamcast collection, for instance. That's awful. It doesn't even save properly. It doesn't work on PC. It's not very good at all. So that's the difference, really. If it's a rare ROM that's not sold anymore, there is, of course, no actual harm in doing it, and that's where the morals come down to it. Is there any lost profit from you doing this? If no, then it's not morally wrong. It's the same with abandonware. Abandonware is a principle and an idea, usually refers to PC games that are not sold or readily available on the shelves or digital distribution anymore. There used to be a site called Home of the Underdogs, hasn't been updated in several years now, but it had a ton of abandonware. Now, the thing is, with services like GOG, abandonware is kind of becoming a thing of the past. You're getting those games that used to be abandonware coming out on GOG with full support, and as far as I'm concerned, if it's on GOG, you should be purchasing it, because it's supporting the old developer to the point where you might actually get a sequel for that game. It is supporting GOG and CD Projekt, who have done nothing but good things for the PC market, and you're supporting yourself, really, because you're getting a great value game that works on Windows 7, whereas the abandonware version might not, and a bunch of extras like soundtracks, wallpapers, avatars, all sorts of cool stuff like that. If it's not available on those services, I really do not see the problem with actually downloading it. There's a game called Metal Fatigue, for instance, that is still not available there. I don't know why. Maybe it's a licensing issue. Metal Fatigue is absolutely amazing, and I would strongly suggest to CD Projekt that they actively pursue it, but I will happily download Metal Fatigue if I want to play it because my discs are broken, and you can't buy it anywhere anyway. So that's the thing. That's what I tend to go for there. If it's not available new, and the only copies are available second-hand, to me, it's okay to download it. That is not the legal position, but as far as I'm concerned, that is the ethical position. As regards to Chrono Trigger, well, as I said, it's available on 2 different platforms to the best of my knowledge, both of which could be bought. It's really good on the DS, by the way. It's not very expensive, and I would suggest that you pick it up on the DS. I believe it's got some additional content in there as well, and you recommend that to your friends. This one comes in from Nicholas that says, recently a topic emerged in the EU League of Legends forums where people were asked to vote on which champions needed buffs and who could use a nerf or two. And the champions at the top of the need a nerf list were all the ones that were really good at stomping on beginners, but useless versus a competent team. Mordekaiser, Tryndamere, etc. This made me wonder whether Riot, or more to the point, game developers in general, should focus their efforts on balancing their games for your average player that just plays for a bit of fun, or balancing everything around the top tier of play. Do you think the game should be balanced around top level of play, and tell beginners that if they want balance, they should just get better? Or should the game sacrifice elements of the competitive scene to make sure newer players aren't scared of? Are there maybe ways around this problem in League of Legends, for instance? Should Riot look into maybe gating the champions so you only get to face the less forgiving ones at higher summoner levels? Do you even think there's a problem, or should developers be able to balance everything around all levels of play? You should never balance a game with any kind of competitive scene around average levels of play. It's as simple as that. You should be balancing it around the high level so that people can aspire to that. I mean, how do you even balance around what's difficult for normal people? How do you define that exactly? There's no way to really tell. I mean, you can tell what works and what doesn't in the competitive scene because you can look at the tier list based on competitive results. And there are a lot of very intelligent people there doing the theory craft. What about normal levels of play? I mean, how are you going to balance it when everyone says every champion that isn't theirs is overpowered? Because that's the principle behind this, isn't it? The idea that, oh, Tryndamere is OP. Tryndamere is not overpowered, but Tryndamere is a bit of a nightmare to play against. I mean, I'll rage against Tryndamere, certainly, because Tryndamere's ulti makes me want to kill kittens. But that doesn't mean that it's imbalanced. The actual character, if you look at it in the grand scheme of things. There's all sorts of incidents where you get a character that just absolutely stomps on everybody else in the game, and then you get cries to nerf that guy. It's like, you don't have a large enough sample size to prove that. Yes, Mordekaiser is a tough champion to go up against in sort of mid-levels of play and low levels as well, because he's highly resilient, he's difficult to kill, but he's certainly not impossible to kill. You cannot balance around the average player, because the average player shifts all the time. You should be balancing around the high levels, and if people have problems, they should just suck it up and get better. I don't see there being a major balance problem in League of Legends right now. Yeah, there's a few champions that need a buff, there's a few champions that need a nerf, but overall the balance is fairly solid, to the point where you're not going to be constantly swearing at the game, unless, of course, you are a rage-filled piece of hate. Which I am, I might add, but I'm not complaining about the balance, I'm just raging because, hey, that's the environment of the game, and I'm totally fine afterwards. So, as far as I'm concerned, you should not be balancing around the average player. It's the same reason StarCraft shouldn't be balanced that way, it's the same reason that World of Warcraft shouldn't be balanced that way. It comes down to, look, if you want to be good, then you need to actually actively work to improve. You can't expect the game to be dumbed down to your level. And all of the time you spend whining on the forums could be spent practicing in order to get better. So why don't you just do that? That makes much more sense as far as I am concerned. But yeah, no balancing around newbies, please. That's a terrible idea. And the gating, no. It seems to me that restricting choice like that is an awful idea as well, because you want people to be able to experience the full breadth of what it has going for it. Here's the thing, MOBA games are really hard to get into. They have a high learning curve, they are a very aggressive, competitive environment, and yes, they will scare people off. Riot shouldn't really be caring about that, and if they do start pandering to that, then I have a feeling they're going the way of Blizzard. We've seen that before, because Blizzard is scared that they'll scare away bad players who subscribe to their game. As far as I can tell, Riot doesn't seem to be so concerned about that. Heroes of New Earth definitely doesn't care all that much. That said, they did bring in casual mode to try and steal some of Riot's customer base, and that's fine, that's a reasonable thing to do as far as I'm concerned. Putting more modes in your game is probably a good idea. The thing is, League of Legends, I don't think has a room for a casual mode, quote-unquote, because, to be honest, it has already made quite a lot of UI concessions and game mechanical concessions to newer players anyway, in comparison to Dota. The idea that you don't have to buy a Scroll of Town portal, for instance, to get back to town. The idea that there are no creep denies, which as far as I'm concerned is fantastic, because creep denying is boring as hell, but whatever. No, you shouldn't be balancing around the mid-level at all. Always balance around the tournament side of things. People will find ways around it. And if they don't, well, that's their own fault. Okay, folks, time for the Steam deals for the 6th of July. By the time this video goes out, there'll probably be another couple of hours of this sale, so you're going to have to pick it up pretty quick. Again, sorry about that. I was too busy yesterday to get everything sorted. The first one on the list, I'm going to give to Killing Floor. It's in the background. Buy Killing Floor. Are you stupid? Are you stupid? You know, tell me, are you stupid? No, you're not stupid. I didn't think so. No, you're a bunch of smart people. You're a bunch of classy individuals. So if you had any sense, of course, you would buy Killing Floor. Loads of content. Loads of money. Lots of things. It is a absolutely fantastic zombie shooter co-op with 6 players as well as persistent class upgrades. It's amazing, and it's currently having its summer sideshow event with all sorts of nonsense, and you can unlock new DLC characters and achievements. It has the best gunplay of any game I have ever played. The gunplay is amazing. It feels really, really meaty, and I'm a huge fan of it. So please go and support Tripwire for their fantastic zombie shooting game. Speaking of zombie shooting, Left 4 Dead 2 is going on for 75% off as well. I like Left 4 Dead 2 for its versus mode, not for its co-op, if I'm totally honest. I think the versus mode of Left 4 Dead 2 is amazing, but I'm not such a big fan of the game in general, simply because I don't like the gunplay. It doesn't feel meaty enough. The guns are too large, to the point where you can barely see what's going on. The melee weapons aren't all that enjoyable. So, to me, Left 4 Dead 2 is not as cool as Killing Floor, but the versus mode is absolutely fantastic, and it's worth picking up for just that. Far Cry 2, 75% off, including also Far Cry for 75% off as well. You can buy Far Cry Complete, which will get you both. Far Cry is a stellar game, and if you haven't played it, you really should. Far Cry 2 is still pretty awesome. It's got amazing graphics, but it does have some problems. It's got some great gunplay, for instance, but it's got an annoying mechanic with malaria, which is annoying as hell. You've got respawning checkpoints. So it's a little bit dodgy, but for that price, considering it's a really, really low price, I certainly wouldn't say no to this game. It's also got the best flamethrower in any game ever. You can set entire forests on fire with it. It's fantastic. Lost Planet 2, 50% off. This is not particularly cheap for this title. There's a very mixed opinion on this. People say the AI is awful and it's got some interface issues and the controls aren't all that amazing, but it's got fantastic co-op. So if you have friends to play Lost Planet 2 with, you might want to consider it. Otherwise, do not touch it. As a single-player game, it's not very good, but the campaign is quite lengthy, between 12 to 14 hours, with replayability thanks to co-op and fantastic DirectX 11 graphics. So it's something to consider if you know for a fact that your friends either own it or are going to buy it. If not, I would avoid. Jamestown, 50% off. This is quite cheap. You might have seen me doing this in WTF Is. It is a bullet hell style shooter that is set on Mars in the 16th century, which makes perfect sense. And you are defending against evil Spanish Martians. It's very, very cool. And it has a fantastic graphic style. If you're looking for a shmup, this would be a good choice. And you can check out my WTF Is on my channel to get a bit more information on that game. Prototype, 50% off. This game is fantastic. I need to just push this on you. It's awesome. It's really, really fun, and it's great PC port as well. Prototype is a free-roaming, destroy everything game. You know, you can just slaughter hundreds upon hundreds of soldiers and just normal people if you like. It's got a great storyline. It's well told. It has no loading times of any description in the entire city. You can actually get hold of someone, go to the top of the Empire State Building, throw them off, and then follow them 3 miles as they fly and splat on the ground. And then you can see people crowding around them and screaming. Then you can, of course, slaughter all of those. So if you're looking for something a little bit cathartic, maybe you had a bad day at work, then you can slaughter hundreds of virtual people in Prototype with arm blades. Why the hell not? Absolutely awesome game. Big, big fan. King's Bounty, franchise sale, 80% off. These games are so goddamn good, and they will soak up large portions of your life. You get Legend, Armored Princess, and Crossworlds as a pack, and it is worth, I think, getting the pack because it is cheaper than just buying Crossworlds and Armored Princess together. So, you might as well. I mean, Legend is not really worth playing if you have Armored Princess, because Armored Princess is better in every respect. But Legend is an additional campaign if you're into that kind of thing. Crossworlds adds a ton of new campaigns as well. It's basically like Heroes of Might and Magic, only you just have one hero, and it's more of an RPG than anything else, and it is absolutely stellar. I would highly recommend it. Batman Arkham Asylum Game of the Year Edition, 75% off. Game is awesome. It really, really is. I keep saying this because most of the games today are absolutely fantastic, and Arkham Asylum is no exception to that one. Really, really great. The best Batman game ever made. One of the best comic book games ever made, and this edition comes with extra challenge maps as well, so there's a lot of content available there. Get yourself ready for Arkham City, which is coming out fairly soon, and I'm really looking forward to that. Grand Theft Auto episodes from Liberty City, that's 75% off as well. Let the buyer beware on this one because sometimes Grand Theft Auto doesn't work very well on your PC. This does come with the episodes The Lost and the Damned, The Ballad of Gay Tony, lots of content available there. It is a really good, solid game if it runs properly on your machine, and as I say, the port is not that great. That said, there are some great HDR and high-definition mods available, which make this game look amazing, so now's probably the time to pick it up, give it a try, and of course, if it doesn't run, well, you haven't lost that much. Atom Zombie Smasher, 70% off. This is unbelievably cheap right now, and this is a very unique game. It's by Blendo, the guys that brought you Flotilla. It is awesome in its own way, and it's really, really hard and punishing. It's a strategy game whereby you try and save civilians from a zombie invasion by using a variety of different powers and unit types. It is very unique. It's got a good 1960s style going on. I like the music for it. There's been a lot of love and care put into this game, but you will get frustrated because it is hard, and that's a good thing. It also has an active modding scene, so if you're looking for something a little bit different, I keep trying to WTF is this game, but Fraps doesn't work properly with it, so I have problems. Nonetheless, I would recommend it, especially for that price. The Sims 3 is 66% off. Do I really need to tell you about The Sims? I'm fairly sure I don't. I'm pretty sure you know what that game is, so I'm not even going to comment on it. And last but by no means least, we have the Gothic series, 75% off. As far as I'm concerned, the only one really worth buying here is Gothic 2 Gold Edition. Gothic 3 is buggy as hell, Gothic 1's a little bit old, and Gothic 4 is highly linear with some terrible AI, plenty of bugs, and not a huge amount going for it as far as I'm concerned. So there are much better RPGs to get, but Gothic 2 is an absolute classic, and you should certainly play it if you've never played it before. The rest of the Gothic games are pretty hit and miss as far as I'm concerned. Right, that covers everything, folks. Thank you very much for watching the Mailbox. And bear in mind, I probably won't be doing videos for the next few days, because as I say, this is my birthday weekend. I've got loads of people over, and we're probably getting smashed. So I might put out a Mailbox video, maybe with some Steam deals, but I cannot promise anything, so please don't expect it. I'll see you next time.